Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the Cinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today we're diving into the story of how the apes became the kings of the cities on the planet of the apes, of the future of the movie made in the year of 1968 in the land of the United States. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we're reviewing Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. God, I've only been saying this for how many years now? These titles suck, but the movies are pretty good. We'll start with an icebreaker question before jumping into a spoiler-free review, where we'll provide a verdict on the film, and then we'll conclude the show by going into an in-depth spoiler discussion. Joining me today, as always, and as I like to say, this podcast, much like apes, when the hosts are together, we are strong. Joining me today, my co-host, an award-winning Oklahoma filmmaker and Pride programmer at the Dead Center Film Festival, Laron Chapman. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me. Am I the either Rocca to my Proximus? I hope not. More on that later.
You're the Proximus. That's the real question of the podcast. Who's Rocca? Who's Proximus?
We'll let you decide, listeners, by the end.
Well, listeners, you be the judge. Send us an email at thecinemetropolis@gmail.com or hit us up on social media to let us know who here is the Proximus of the podcast. Also very excited to be joined by, we're doing a little bit of a rebrand here. We're welcoming for the first time the co-host, one half of the Two Dudes in a Movie podcast, also treasurer of the Oklahoma Film Critics Circle, Chelsea Ratterman. Chelsea, welcome back to the show.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here for the first time. For the 100th time. I have no idea. For the first time of many more times to come again.
So Chelsea, we have one more guest we'll introduce in a second, but new brand, Geek Girl Features, now two dudes, sorry, not two girls in a movie, two dudes in a movie podcast. Tell us about that. What's the new digs?
Yeah, so my co-host, Luke Parrish, reached out. His co-host had moved to China.
Wow.
And was like, hey, that's probably not going to work for us. And I had actually been haunting him about trying to come on, and I had done an episode, and then he was like, do you want to come be the new dude? So we're sticking with two dudes. I am the gender neutral dude in this title. That's how we're using it now. So
very progressive.
Yes,
I appreciate this.
So yeah, no, it's fun. So check us out.
Excellent. Well, hey, congratulations on the new gig. We're so excited to also, in all seriousness, welcome you back for, I don't know, at least the 15th time by now, I'm sure.
I'm sure. I mean, and like I said, more times to come. We actually aren't counting anymore.
Yeah. Just current. I have a very high tab in which I owe Chelsea favors. That's what this looks like. In all reality, I am very excited to welcome a first-time guest. He is the host of the Entertainment Answer, the Mungle Show podcast. He's a member of the Oklahoma Film Critics Circle and the Critics' Choice Association. Matt Mungle. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I have been wanting to be here for so long, so I guess my check cleared.
It finally cleared.
Okay. I'm the only one old enough to remember the original, so that kind of helped too, I think. So
you do provide very valuable historical context. I didn't realize until I've probably realized this before, but it's been how many years since the 7 years since the last one? And I was like, man, it's crazy how fast the very original Ape series came out. It was like, one every 1 to 2 years, cranking them out. And it takes us 7 years to get one sequel out. It's nuts. But Matt, hey, we're really excited to welcome you to the show. Again, super tenured, experienced film critic here now in the Oklahoma City Metro. I guess I've been here for a little while, but first time on the show. Well, listeners, before we get into today's review, I just wanted to note that if you are listening and you enjoy the show and you enjoy these Ape Talks, please make sure to support us by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review on your preferred podcast app. Hey, also, quick note, we're going to be doing a little bit of a giveaway on social media here in the next 2 weeks. Dead Center Film Festival is right around the corner, which means we're actually going to have some giveaways for some passes that you guys are going to need to follow us on social media to check out. And it's going to involve you leaving a rating and a review on the podcast. So if you've already done this, you can just send me a screen cap of your review and you can send those to the email, thecinemetropolis@gmail.com. But if you haven't, make sure to do that. You can rate us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And again, I would just say send us a screen grab, send it to that email, thecinematropolis@gmail.com. More information and perhaps some other prizes heading over there. But again, Laron, not to put you on the spot, Dead Center, it's a great film festival. I mean, I know we're all very unbiased here, right? But what would you say in terms of people getting a pass? It comes with a lot of cool stuff, right?
Lots of cool things. We got a lot of nightlife stuff. If you like watching movies outdoors, we got something on the lawn. It's Scissortail Park. And then obviously a lot of incredible movies that curated by me and my very talented programming team. So please check it out. And actually right now until the 27th, I believe, you can have 50% off of the passes, which is a huge perk because I think it takes off $100. So
it's pretty significant, guys. It's like, it's normally like around $200 for a pass.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either buy one outright, deadcenterfilm.org, or you can enter for a chance to win here on the Cinematic Schematic by, again, leaving us a review on your preferred podcast app, screenshotting that and sending it to thecinematropolis@gmail.com. Again, more information to come on our social media channels. That includes Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever. Without further ado, let's jump into our icebreaker question. So I actually struggled with what do we talk about when we talk about this movie? And, there's a lot of reboot fatigue. Laron and I and Chelsea, we've been on this show. We've complained about requels, reboots, mining IP that's been dead for 20 years. So this question seems totally against everything I complain about on this podcast regularly.
It's for fun.
What pre-1980 film should get a 2020 style reboot or reimagining? And I want to preface this. The reason I'm asking this is because the Apes series actually did it well in 2011 and kind of does it a little bit again to varying degrees of good or bad in this movie. So what other film, I picked pre-1980s because that's really when IP era really kicks into high gear. What film should get a modern reboot? And Laron, Chapman, I'll start with you.
So I actually went with something from the 80s, The Breakfast Club. This is something that obviously like complete left field. I remember growing up watching all of the John Hughes movies and feeling like, for lack of a better word, there's no people of color in any of them. Yeah. So I figured The Breakfast Club, which is such a staple for so many teens and, and anyone who grew up in that time frame, like, that's something where I think that we actually could have, because it was kind of a conversation piece more so about social status within the hierarchy of high school. But I feel like you could have a conversation about race, gender, all of things that Gen Zers are talking about right now, and have a very diverse, attractive cast, kind of make up that body. So, and I think you should call it The Brunch Club instead. Play on work.
Okay, I love this pitch. I have an honest question, and this is me coming to terms with the fact that I'm one of the olds now. Is Gen Z as into brunch as millennials were? I'm honest question.
That is a good question, actually. I'm not sure. I don't go to brunch with them. So I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I don't know if is that just our generation? 90s onward. Like,
I'm gonna
like brunch.
I'm gonna roll. I'm gonna roll with yes on The Brunch Club because I think it's a great idea. But I'm like, do kids go to brunch anymore?
It's a good question.
Millennials were into it.
That's true. Yeah, I feel like it'll still be nostalgic, but I think there's a lot of fun social commentary I think you can have about youth with that particular premise, at least.
And unlike Euphoria, it would be lots of fun, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. The Brunch Club, I love it, and I think it could market itself. I think you really have to market it to it's different than Euphoria, but the Euphoria crowd.
Yes. Right? This isn't your dad's breakfast club.
There we go. This isn't
your
just
mom and dad's breakfast.
This isn't just ham and eggs.
Yeah, exactly. It's avocado toast and espresso.
Yeah.
All right, Chelsea Ratterman, what is your reboot of choice?
My reboot of choice. We all know I love my universes. I think Universal missed the boat. Like, they were too early for the Dark Universe. Yeah. And I think we should reassess because of book talk. Because monsters are sexy again.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So they were too early. Come back.
Yeah.
Let's have Frankenstein. Let's have Dracula. Let's have the whole thing. But make it sexy.
Make it sexy.
Make it sexy.
Make it edgy.
I feel like, we talked about this very loosely,
mm-hmm.
and we're trying to be vague. We did talk about this a little bit with Abigail,
Mhm.
You know, is it time to give the Dark Universe another go? Just maybe don't market the universe before the movie is out, right? I could see some sexy. I mean, Lady Frankenstein. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a Frankenstein movie coming out, right? I think Del Toro's finally getting to make it.
I think so.
I think
I remember reading about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because they shifted the approach to now it's like you have like more directors with like a little bit more like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
independence, a little bit of a more singular idea instead of the whole universe concept. They try to do Dark Universe right after like the whole YA Twilight.
Yeah.
That's why no.
Yeah.
We adult monsters.
And how many horror franchises have we rebooted, resurrected that didn't need? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
this is something they haven't done right yet in the modern, in modern times. So I feel like that's definitely something that could be fun to see.
There's an opportunity there. Okay.
Was that what Tom Cruise wanted to do with The Mummy? Wasn't he going to do
Yeah.
all of them?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It flopped and
it just botched.
that huge
Right.
photo shoot that was on Entertainment Weekly
Yeah.
or Variety or whatever?
Was
Yeah.
Was I on that episode? I hate that movie. It is the second movie in my entire life I have failed.
Yeah.
It has an F. It's the only one of two.
Oh, wow.
Right.
I hate Tom Cruise. Get out of here.
Get out of here. Go
You
buy.
ruined the Dark Universe for me.
he did it no favors, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's-
Yes.
Who directed that one again? That was I feel like
I
that was
don't even remember who directed that.
Oh, shucks.
Was it a notable person?
I feel like it was someone of some sort of noteworthy, but maybe he could have been like an MCU style gun for hire type person. I don't know. I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Dark Universe. So Chelsea's not giving it up.
I'm not.
She's like, much like the Phoenix, she believes that Dark Universe can rise from the ashes for the Gen Zs and the millennials. I'm going to sound like a curmudgeon in this episode. All right, Matt, what film would you pick?
Before I get into my hatred for remakes, I do want to say that if they did it like Poor Things and made her character like the Mummy and all them sort of like that same feel, I think it would be very nice.
Yeah.
That'd be great if we didn't have Tom Cruise refrigerating the Mummy.
Let's start with
Tom Cruise is out of the picture.
Yeah, no
He's
Tom
gone.
Cruise. Tom Cruise is
That was-
done.
He's done.
let's start with casting younger actors. Number one.
Yeah.
I have other beef on that one.
Great call.
It's because I'm no longer the target market, and I realize it.
Okay, sorry, Matt, I won't cut you off. But
no,
I want to
no.
put this out.
Tangent.
This is a tangent. I just want to acknowledge because we did a very impromptu bonus episode with friends of the show, Dalton Stewart and Alexandra Bohannon, reviewing The Fall Guy. And, we saw it and talked about it right after the box office had come out. And you have a moment where you're like, oh, millennials are growing out of the target demographic age group. And apparently the feedback the studios were getting was that the leads were too old. And I was like, because they were like, why isn't this working for the young people? And it's because Ryan Gosling no longer appeals to the hype 20s demographic guys. It's the fun's over.
Is this what it feels like to get old? Is this what it? Because I still feel like
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it does.
I was like, my goodness. I was like, I mean, 34, and I'm starting to feel like, like,
You're like, I thought.
does my voice not matter anymore?
You thought Emily Blunt, Ryan Gosling, those are two hot,
Right?
attractive movie stars. No, they've been around for like 20 years. Laron's
true.
No, yeah.
This is true.
Anyway, Matt, bring it back from us millennials having existential crisis over here. What is your pick for Reboot?
Well, as I said, I am not a fan. I can't think of one reboot that I liked. I have rules for reboots. The only reason I appreciated Psycho is they stuck to the original script. I think if you're going to reboot, don't change the script at all. Keep it exactly the same script, almost scene for scene shot. But even Psycho, I didn't really like. Maybe Logan's Run, because they're sort of bringing, they could do some really cool stuff with that. But then I thought, why not find the worst movie ever, and I don't know what it is, in the 70s and redo that one, because then you have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
People are like, well, that was a horrible then. How bad can it get?
That's always been my approach. Just like, don't reboot things that are already good. Reboot things that didn't work.
Yeah,
and then make them better.
Why not remake a great film? And unless Blumhouse did a Rear Window, like even though they had the Shia version of Rear Window, but
Disturbia.
Yeah, Disturbia. But yeah, I can't think of a new, because I just have such a hard time. And maybe you guys can help. Was there a good one? Was there a good remake I'm not thinking of?
There's reboots that sometimes have good ideas.
Yeah.
But they aren't like, I think the Friday the 13th reboot, the one that came out in the 2010 or late aughts, was.
I think generally speaking, no.
No.
The answer is no.
Generally
I
speaking,
think there
no.
are very rare occasions, all of which have escaped me right now. But
well, and then there was X-Men First Class, which was originally pitched as a reboot, but then they later retconned it as a prequel.
Yeah.
So
Now, again, are we talking remake or reboot? Because you could take a storyline like you were talking about and relaunch it with the same characters in a different time area. Are we talking about a remake where it's the same film, it's just redone in modern time with a new cast?
I think it could go either way. They're often conflated. That's a really good distinction to make. Because you could argue that Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol is a reboot of sorts, because that's where they start to lean into Tom Cruise into the I'm a stuntman now, and then kind of away from the spy. And there's always the spy element, but they're leaning a lot more in, oh, he climbed this tower. And then after that, it was always like, what's the crazy thing he's going to do? I guess Pirates of the Caribbean kind of had a reboot with the fourth one, right? Sort of.
Right.
I guess I don't know. That's dicey territory because it's new director. Then what qualifies a reboot? You know.
Well, speaking of reboots, I mean, the Planet of the Apes series is actually a pretty good iteration of I think the old ones. I feel like if you think of this trilogy I think is really strong. Like at least the one right before this. So I don't know. I mean.
But the Wahlberg remake was horrible.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
We don't even mention that one.
Okay, good.
We don't mention that one.
No.
So in this instance, a reboot is good, but the remake was horrible. So it does distinguish which one you're doing.
No, it's a good point because this one, you get into some weird time travel shenanigans the further you get in the original Planet of the Apes series. But I think this one functions well enough as it's still technically in the same continuity, largely. Yeah, that's a good point. I for one was sort of leaning towards a Clockwork Orange, but we set it with a modern context, which is going to be, I think you're going to be dealing a lot with social media as a prime mechanism for mind control, that sort of thing. That one, again, it is sort of it is the question, is it a reboot or a remake? Because I think with this, it would be a separate world. It's more like you're taking the idea and really reimagining, which that's a third one, I guess you could say, a reimagining. Man, Matt's splitting the difference here. That's really good. I'm going to say we reboot Citizen Kane, but this time he's a tech billionaire.
Yeah.
Okay.
Set in 2024.
But will it have the same influence? That's the question.
It depends on if Elon Musk is funding it.
Well, there you go.
or Jeff Bezos.
Or Jeff Bezos. Yeah.
Hey, Matt, thanks. That's some great distinction there. Reboot, remake, reimagining. What franchise would you like to see get a redo? Would you say? You can email us at thecinematropolis at gmail.com. Without further ado, we're going to move into our spoiler-free review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Are you familiar with the concept of ee-vo-lution? In their time, humans were capable of many great things. They could fly like eagles fly. They could speak across oceans. But now it is our time, and it is my kingdom.
So according to IMDb, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is described as many years after the reign of Caesar. I'm just going to qualify. It's actually 300 according to the wiki article. So just make that very clear. 300 years after the reign of Caesar, a young ape goes on a journey that will lead him to question everything he's been taught about the past and make choices that will define a future for apes and humans alike. So a few notable facts about this film. So Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is the 10th entry in the Planet of the Apes franchise and the 4th in the Reboot series that started with 2011's Rise of the Planet of the Apes, starring James Franco. And again, the titles for these movies are very confusing, very tedious. Yeah, it's a whole thing. We'll probably talk about it more. This one, I should say notably, Matt Reeves directed the second and the third one, which were Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes. Matt Reeves of the Batman fame and Cloverfield fame, should clarify. This film is directed by a new director, Wes Ball, who is most famous for directing the Maze Runner film adaptations of the young adult novel series in the 2010s. Speaking to my personal interests, he was recently announced to direct the Legend of Zelda movie for Sony Pictures and Nintendo. This film also stars Owen Teague as Noah, Kevin Durand as Proximus Caesar, Peter Macon as Raka, Lydia Peckman as Suna, and Freya Allen of the Witcher series fame as May or Nova. A few things that carried over from the previous three movies. The VFX for this movie were primarily handled by Weta FX, who had done all the special effects on the last iteration, with this film being shot on location, which is notable when so many films are being shot on the volume. That's the giant LED screen sets these days. The Fall Guy had a real tough time and did not make waves at the box office. I don't know if Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes quite got there, but it did exceed expectations and opened at number 1 in the US with $56 million domestically and another $72 million internationally for a total of $129 million, which is, removing inflation, relatively consistent with the first and the third entries of the franchise. So Rise of the Apes and then War for the Apes. With that said, what did we think of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? Special guest, first time guest, Matt. What did you think?
There were things about it I appreciated. There were some throwbacks to the original from 68, 67.
68, yeah,
68, yeah, that I appreciated. I think I wanted more. Like you said, it's 300 years in the future. A lot of stuff should have happened. We're 7 years removed from the last film, but I don't feel like there was no evolution in what we got. I mean, story-wise, character-wise, it felt too much like what we'd seen already. And I just didn't get the depth I wanted. Just as a broad synopsis of what I felt, I think I wanted a little bit more.
Okay.
Didn't hate it, but there was something else I just felt like I was wanting to pull from it.
You're thinking, hey, it's been 7 years. Creatively, what's the big idea, really, that's going to justify doing another entry?
Yeah, and going back to the trailer, again, I don't like trailers because they do tend to, like we alluded to with Fall Guy, they kind of bait and switch you a little bit. They really used elements from the trailer to make you think you were getting a lot of what we got in the first film.
Yeah.
With how they would just, the certain things you would do and how they were treating the humans in the interaction. But then we only got a small bit of that, and the rest of it was just a lot of emoting.
That's a funny you mentioned that. I just rewatched the entire Reboot trilogy with my wife. She hadn't seen them before, so it was a great excuse for me to bust them out. Had them on 4K, hadn't watched them yet. And I will say that the titles and the way those movies are marketed is similarly deceiving. The third one's War for the Planet of the Apes, and it is easily the least action-oriented of the trilogy, even though it's quite good. It's just, but I think a lot of people were down on that movie when it came out because it was marketed as the war type movie, and what we got was something way smaller scale, way more intimate and emotional. So you're saying maybe something similar to that occurred with Kingdom.
I do, because there's a lot of action in the trailer, and then when we get there, all the action we have already seen in the trailer, and then a lot of it was just the how the perspective, I know we'll get into it, of how they're taking 300 years separated from Caesar, how different sects appeal to that. So there was a lot of, I don't know, more mental game than there was just like a battle between who's going to survive.
Yeah. All right, great points. Chelsea Ratterman, what did you think?
I feel like I just complain about this on every single movie. It had some pacing issues. Again, you can at this point just cut 15 minutes off whatever movie you're going to release. It's just standard. Like you made it, cut 15 minutes. I think I'd agree with a lot of what Matt said though. Like we didn't really see an evolution of the story we've already started to tell. We're just kind of seeing some of the beats repeated later on. But I also don't did we need a Star Wars scroll on this one? Because we don't know how certain people survived across the 300 years. We don't know how we have these sects that have created and, with the different parts of Caesar's legacy. So I feel like there was a lot of we don't know, just that we needed, that was fundamental information. I felt.
Yeah.
It was funny because, again, though, not to continue repeating the point, but War for the Planet of the Apes also did actually have which is funny because that one takes place pretty close to the end of the previous entry. So that entry, and it had a very long scroll over the first opening shots of the movie. It's funny you mentioned the Star Wars comparison though, because I feel like this really cribs heavily from Star Wars.
Yeah.
At least first act.
And if you look at some of the press that they're doing, like this is a new trilogy, and they apparently have 9 films planned.
Allegedly.
So maybe this is Star Wars: Planet of the Apes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they can wrap up the third trilogy in a more satisfying way than Star Wars. Laron, Chapman, what did you think of the film?
Yeah, I would echo both of our guest sentiments here. I think that if they weren't going to do the Star Wars scroll, kind of approach at the very beginning, then I did anticipate, well, they're not telling us very much. It just says many generations later. We don't even know how many generations. Like you mentioned, it's 300.
Yeah, and that's not in the movie.
You had to Google that.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things where I think that, okay, sure, they're probably going to explain all these things. And that's the surprising thing is they really kind of don't. They kind of just drop us into it. Which to a certain extent is okay, but I felt like as you mentioned with pacing issues, about by the midway point, it kind of felt like, okay, so where are we going? Is we've now established the conflict, you know what I mean? But I feel like we're not getting any new information until the third act, you know what I mean? And until really the last scene of the third act, So I think that for the most part, in terms of as on a technical level, it's on par, I think, with the others, and I think it looks great, I do feel the absence of Andy Serkis here. I hate to say it, the new cast is good, but I do think that the gravitas that he brought
he's the GOAT
to Caesar is just is not here. You know what I mean? So it does feel a little muted in terms of, that kind of triumphant, quality that I think the other ones have. But I worried that making this movie, what is the reason we're doing it? Because I really did think that War for the Planet of the Apes actually was a pretty perfect ending, a pretty perfect conclusion to this, So I left this feeling like I enjoyed it, as a solid standalone piece of entertainment. But I do wonder, if we're gonna get more films out of this, if there's enough meat on the bones in the story, because I don't feel at the end of this that there is a whole lot more to explore that hasn't at least already been explored extensively in the other movies. So
theoretically, we're only the next entry is the halfway marker, Laron. So and you're like, I think we're already out of gas.
I think we're I feel like maybe there's one more solid one. But I think beyond that, I just don't know what you're going to say that hasn't been said.
Yeah, so I think I coming in a little warmer than everyone at the table, but not a lot. My expectations for this were just in the basement. I mean, not that I thought the last trilogy was a nice surprise. It was actually very impressive that they pulled off, especially the second and the third one, but even the first one's pretty solid. The second and the third one, though, were really top-tier blockbusters, doing some really smart, inventive things with a franchise I didn't think we needed any. I thought it was dead, and we should just leave it there, the iconic original especially. And was very impressed with the VFX, with Andy Serkis. It also felt like nice counter-programming to all the superhero movies we were getting throughout that time period in the 2010s. So with this one, I'm sitting here thinking, well, what is there left to do? And I was pleasantly surprised. Now, I think the stuff that I'm most interested in is the world building, which is does not a story make. So I do think the pacing, yeah, Matt, you and Chelsea nailed it. There's at least 20 minutes. Chelsea, you said it, at least 20 minutes. That second act drags. And then the other thing, Matt, to your point, and I'm just going to start assuming this for all of these movies because it's been the same for the last 3 of these things. The titles are garbage and don't represent what the film is actually about. And neither does the marketing, because the trailers really kind of market this huge tribal war over knowledge, and you're assuming that the humans sort of like the MacGuffin, and you really don't get that in this movie. It actually turns to be a much smaller scale,
like character studies almost, which is fine. It's just I think if you're going in with a different set of expectations, then that can be underwhelming.
Well, and that's the thing. I think it's sort of like aiming at this broader thing, and it was honestly similar as War, where you're like, oh, I mean, that movie in particular, I thought this is fantastic, but also it is not at all what the title or the marketing looks. So, yeah, I just I think it's pretty good. I'm curious about where they go next. I'm kind of with you, but the VFX were so much better than almost everything else we get these days. I mean, it's better than anything we got from Marvel or DC, most Disney films at this point. So I'll take that as a win. But overall, just pretty good.
Yeah.
Thanks in large part to low expectations. But how well did you guys think this story transitioned away from the Matt Reeves films, which were a lot more, especially the third one was a lot more like somber and sort of introspective? Laron?
We do get right into it. At the beginning, there's a, with introducing the new characters and the new conflicts, but I do feel like it does feel, again, like it's pretty drawn out. The story is pretty drawn out. It has a couple of pretty interesting ideas that I know we're going to explore in greater detail, particularly as it pertains to like the threat in the story, and what that threat represents and what it says about our own culture. But I feel like that idea alone isn't enough, to really encompass the entirety of the movie. And I think that as far as transitioning, I feel like there's a lot left out, a lot left out in explaining, because I think until I actually looked into the movie, I assumed this was actually just going to be, a couple years in the future, and that this character was, and so once I realized, oh, it's going to be that far ahead. Okay, well, this is literally a new iteration of it. But as Matt mentioned earlier, it's like there's so much time that's passed, and I feel like it doesn't differentiate itself well enough from the others to really feel like like this is a new iteration. It feels like this is just a couple of years later. You know what I mean? Like so I don't know how effectively it transitions from the other ones. I feel like it feels still very closely related to it, even though the narrative is telling us that it's 3 centuries in the future. So, but
yeah. Chelsea, any thoughts on transition? Have you? I mean, in fact, when was the last time you watched one of the other ones? Might be a better question.
I had never seen them before this weekend.
Oh wow!
So you're fresh.
I'm fresh.
Okay.
Yes. Which the second one was in the middle. We were trying to watch it in the middle of all the Aurora stuff. So I'm like, do we even remember the second one now? I kind of what I kind of already said. It's like there's so much missing between the third one to this one. That is, it's generations later. We now have, essentially deification of previous characters. And there's just so much information about this, the social, the society that it now exists that we don't know. And I don't think was fleshed out enough. How did we end up with these 2 different veins of Caesar's philosophies?
There's only 2 that we know of, by the way.
That we know
Sure.
of, yeah.
Okay,
So it's
sure.
like we had a clear break. I had a couple of other ones that I'm missing it off the top of my head right now, but so we have Caesar. So who is Caesar's successor? We have people claiming it, or what happened?
Mm-hmm.
We need at least a little bit of a Star Wars scroll, little bit,
just a little bit, a little piece, or a scene. I don't want to say a flashback scene. That wouldn't be good, but you know what I mean. Something of that. There's a chunk of narrative missing to help provide some emotional impact for investing in this new story before we're just thrown into it. So
because we revisit the third movie teeny tiny bit at the very beginning, which basically is just reminding us this is where we came from. This is this character, and we need to remember him because he is important to the story. But how? We don't know.
How and why.
And why.
When did he become Semos? I don't know. Matt, what did you think about how they transitioned from the previous trilogy?
No, I think you guys have nailed it. I felt like watching this, Dr. Sadler and Ian Malcolm and Ellie, and when they're touring Jurassic Park and they're just flying by, that's what I felt like. I wanted to stop and go, well, what about this? What about the cellular mitosis? How did they do that? I felt like I was on this ride that I couldn't stop. And you're right, I had all these questions that I was just supposed to assume, well, this is how this happened. This is how these 2 off split. And then they run into other characters. I'm like, well, where's this person been? And he seems to have a different aspect than this. And so it was just too thin, I think, as a story. And then once you get into the story, it's done almost like Maze Runner, where the first Maze Runner movie was like, and then at the end, they're like, oh, you want something cool? Wait till the next one. Yeah. I almost felt like it was that. It was like, well, you're not going to get it in this one. So I don't know. Again, it sounds like you are a little bit warmer than I am, but it wasn't bad. It was entertaining, as you said, but thin, way too thin.
Yeah, I'll save a lot of it for spoilers. The stuff that works for me is probably just stuff that I don't know. We'll talk about it. I don't know. It works for me because it's interesting, but it's not necessarily this. It's not the story. It's not really the characters. It's just like seeing how the world has evolved in the absence of Caesar, and also sort of because we are living in a world that is impacted by his legacy. Now we're not really getting the details of how we got from points what C to D, but you're here at D and you're like, oh, so here's how this stuff that happened a really long time ago has been mythologized, and what are the implications on the larger world. I don't know if that makes it a good movie, but it's given me a lot of things to think on and talk about with people. I did think it was.
It's not without ideas. I think I just think there's a lot more that could have been fleshed out character-wise for the people for the new iteration of characters we're following for this 2.5-hour movie. That's the thing that I think was missing for me. But
the iconography, like for example, the iconography, it was a nice touch that it's basically a window design from the original movie, the window from the attic he lived in when he was being raised by James Franco's character. He is then turns into a symbol for liberation when he's trying to break out the apes later in Rise of the Apes, and then again in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, that then becomes this thing on his headstone that basically turns into the cross. Essentially, obvious on the nose, but I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And so we're sort of trying to explore how heroes are mythologized to become like sort of like Messiah type people. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting. It honestly doesn't have a ton to do with the main story. And I don't understand why these tribes are at war, or how many tribes there are, or why certain people know about Caesar and other people don't. There's just a lot of questions to your point. But I do think they were better off. I do think, again, maybe having a scroll in there, I do think it was better for them to pivot into a different direction, because I really do think Caesar's story was pretty conclusive.
That's true.
And by trying to kind of follow the immediate aftermath of that, I just don't know if it would have been.
It would have really felt like plotting at that point.
Either that, or it was going to be Game of Thrones, which would have been cool with apes.
End it. I say that as someone who's super excited about season 2 of House of Dragons. So
coming soon. Let's go. Hey, you want to be on a Game of Thrones podcast? Okay. Last thing, we're going to rank here in a second. But I liked the visual effects. Was I the only one who was like, these are pretty badass? I just thought they were super impressive. If you think they're bad, that's fine.
No. I was thinking if I had went into a coma in 1982 and woke up this weekend, they're like, hey, I'm glad you're awake. You want to go to a movie? And I went, I'd be like, damn, they taught apes how to act. Like, I wouldn't have thought you would not have been able to convince me as somebody who went to sleep in 1980 that these weren't real animals. That's how good it was to me. It was just that. Yeah, but they did that in the couple of the other trilogies too.
Yeah.
Again, thanks to Andy Serkis, it's just mind blowing how great it looks.
Yeah, the facial animations, I feel like every one of them gets a little bit better too. And I watching it. Typically, I've always been on team practical effect, makeup, whatever. And then I watched, and granted, it's not a very good movie, but then you go watch the Tim Burton remake from 2001. Again, not a great movie, and there's probably different choices they can make, but you can see exactly why you're like, yep, there are limitations to prosthetics that you can't get some of the expressions that precise with the makeup and the prosthetics. Laron, what did you think?
Yeah, the visuals I think remain top tier. If they might be a tick or two better than some of the other films, just because it is getting better with time. I also felt like there's a really thrilling sequence involving water, which later on in the film that I thought was really, really impressive. So
hard to do water well.
Yeah. But Weta just does a great job in general. Even a movie that I think I liked a lot more than you, Cocaine Bear. The bear was still pretty.
The bear was pretty
cool.
great.
Yeah, the bear was pretty cool. So I'm very impressed with the visuals. Yeah, I think the world building and the production value was really strong here. And so that's definitely not that definitely carried over from the other one. So
very nice.
Yeah,
Chelsea.
Yeah. What always struck me was their hands. Like whenever their hands would be in view, like just like you could see like the detail and everything, and I'm just like, I was just captivated by their hands every time it came on screen. I was like, wow. I think it's really interesting because this movie is part of the whole AI conversation a little bit too, because of the engine learning, and then so like they used it as the basis, and then we had the artists come back, and since they didn't have to do like the lip sync and the matching themselves, they had so much more time to be focused and be so detailed. And it's like, if this is where we're going, I can get behind it.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. This could be a good case study for how do you say. And we should also note this is the same VFX house Weta who largely worked on the Avatar films, which love them or hate them. I do think they are pioneering the future of computer generated VFX. Yeah. And part of that was they also had used AI extensively because that was the only way they could scale the ideas in the world. And using a similar approach to this film, I think it worked out really nicely because it all looks so handcrafted. Everything, every character, even the minor characters, it's super impressive. Even if the performances are not even close to Andy Serkis, you still just got to admire.
Not bad. I want to emphasize they're not bad, but it's just you can feel his absence in this.
Right.
I will say that.
Well, with that said, how about we rank the films since the 2011 reboot? Unless you guys are familiar with all 10 of the other movies, I'm not. I haven't watched some of those since the Sci-Fi Channel original days when I was a young one. So Chelsea Ratterman, how would you rank since they're fresh off the top of your mind?
They're so fresh. I don't know. As I binge them in like 2 days.
They're all just one movie, really.
They are just all one movie. I mean, we all know I'm a proponent of first movie. So I think first movie, Rise, is number one for me, just because I always appreciate like the initial world building, the setting it up. And I really think you can always best that, but it is always, I think, like the best.
Good foundational,
yeah.
It's basically, I like to say it's basically Caesar Begins, and instead of Batman Begins, it's got the very origin story type arc to it,
right?
Which is fun.
So I think it would be Rise, and then maybe either War or Kingdom. I think are sitting right there, and then Dawn might be the last one for me.
Wow.
Again, it's fresh. So I'm still kind of like
processing
the meat of what each one was. Which one do I think is, because they all are really important. They're all asking really important questions about like society and human and animal and everything that we have questions about. So it's like which question who asked the best question is what I'm at.
Well, so to recap, you have Rise is number one, Kingdom is number two.
I don't know yet. I'm gonna put Kingdom at
Kingdom and 2. I think we're sitting.
Okay.
3
key, and then you had War was okay.
Yeah.
So
and then Dawn
at the bottom. Okay. All right. Interesting, Matt.
I'm pretty there with you. I mean, Rise is always good because you do have the beginning. War was really good. I have a feeling that 5 years from now, I'm not going to be able to tell you a lot between them, and almost even now, because it's been a long time since I've watched the first two. It's just hard. They seem like the same movie, and I feel like this is going to be the sort of the same thing. I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm going to remember more because we're talking about it now and really talking about it. But being removed from it, I don't know. They're all pretty plateau about the same. Because I wouldn't go back and watch any of them again.
All right. There's the real answer. Does it matter if I won't watch them again?
Right. So it's like, if you want to rank them, okay, this one's good because it's new. There you go.
I'm still thinking about this right now. So number one. Okay. So Matt's not participating because they're not worth rewatching. Not to say they're bad. They're just not.
Yeah. They're not bad. They were in the moment, they were entertaining. They were fun. You went and watched them, thought about it, and moved on. But there's nothing I'm going to go back and revisit.
Okay. All right. Fair answer. Laron Chapman.
So I feel like this franchise really kicked into gear once Matt Reeves took over. And for me, Dawn is actually my favorite one because I feel like it just becomes more expansive. And I think the first one, maybe it's Franco, hasn't aged well. I don't know.
The bad guy, the corporate bad guy is kind of cartoonish.
Right. Yeah. The Caesar character, though, the introduction of Caesar is really magnificent. Like the fact that we don't hear him speak, and when he finally does speak in that one, it is very powerful. So it's like a nice, introduction to that character. But I found 2 more interesting because I find the apes far more interesting than the humans. And 2 just kind of steeps you into their politics and their way of life. So there's almost, I won't say a silent film, but it kind of feels, like very much just very ape focused until finally the threat of humans come back into the fray. And so for me, it's Dawn, then War, and then I think Kingdom, and then Rise. And so I think the only reason I would swap Rise with Kingdom is that I think the tech is far better in Kingdom than it is in Rise, because we were just starting. So
Yeah. I think that's a apt point about Matt Reeves taking over, because I also have, it's tough though. I think Chelsea does make a good point. I think all of them have very big and very specific ideas they're dealing with. And so it does make it tougher for me to separate. I do think I like Dawn the best, because we do still, the apes are the focus, but it's a little more even. So what's also interesting about these three movies, and when you watch them, the first movie is primarily human focused, with Caesar being your kind of like main character, but the humans have just as much, if not more, screen time than him. The second one, it's really split. So you have entire sequences, they're just the apes, the politics, like you said, Laron. But then you still have the humans who are trying to figure out how to avert a war with the apes. So there's still some of that going on there. And then you have war where it's, nope, the apes are just the main 100% main group. I mean, Woody Harrelson doesn't show. I mean, I guess the humans really don't want to have a strong characteristic about them other than Woody Harrelson, who's basically just saying, look at me do Apocalypse Now. Isn't it great? And it kind of works. So I think I would do Dawn. I think Kingdom's more rewatchable because it's more fun.
Okay.
War is a very sad movie.
It is a sad.
Very somber. Even my wife was like, this movie, she says, well, all of them are kind of sad. This one's super sad. Like, it's just, it ends on kind of a bittersweet note. And anyway, it's a rough one. Visually though, it's probably my favorite. Then I go, so Dawn, War, Kingdom, could swap them depending on the mood I'm in, and then Rise at the bottom. But again, I think Rise is really good. Yeah. It's pretty awesome. I just think mostly there's that capitalist character who's a little bit of a cartoon figure. He's like, you're full of shit. Oh, wait, but I tested on my dad. Oh, you can do, okay, let's get this thing in. Let's go, let's move. And then he does the thing at the end with the helicopter. Anyway, it's kind of funny actually, but it's very cartoonish, which kind of took me out of the film a little bit. So Dawn, War, Kingdom, Rise.
A good point was brought up. I think it'd be for me, and I don't have an answer right now, but as you were talking, I felt like with a franchise like this, it'd be more fun to rank your favorite moments in the franchise than overall film. Because like you said, each film has certain moments where you're like, that was amazing. Yeah. And so those might even make might
stand out more.
Yeah. The least ranked film might have one of the greater moments in it. So
I remember specifically Dawn, I do remember on the posters, and it was a great moment in the film too, was the first time you saw the apes riding the horses with their guns. And they were charging into the city. And that actually was the movie that made the most money of all of those prequels, and by a pretty considerable amount. And I think that's just because the marketing for that was so good. We'd never seen anything like that on the big screen before, and it was marketed well, and it paid off in the movie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And going back to the original, as a kid watching the original, that was the most terrifying part to me, was watching them ride on the horses and capturing people. It was like, this is insane. So for them to bring that back, and you're right, that was pretty powerful even in the later ones.
Yeah. It is. I guess so. It is sort of like we had seen it before, but we hadn't seen it. See, the context is different.
Scale.
Yeah, because it was on the scale, and it was against the backdrop of San Francisco. So you're like, it's one thing when it's this distant future, but to see it like the apes look so realistic in a city we recognize.
For real.
Yeah. Well, any other moments you guys want to call out before we move on to letter grades? I think that's a good point. No other moments? Okay, well, it's a lot of sad moments. We could recap them. The time where Caesar's kids get his wife and son get murdered. The time when he did that prison break was incredible, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good stuff. Well, with that said, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, though, what letter grade would we give this film, Chelsea Ratterman?
I think I'm going to give it a B.
B.
Just because of the pacing. And I'm just real tired of this being my issue, and I'm just going to knock everybody off a whole letter grade every time now.
I hate to tell you, Furiosa's also 2.5 hours long.
But if it moves,
it's gonna count.
But if it moves,
I mean, I agree.
Make the moments count.
I agree.
For me to understand that grade, what did you grade the last Blade Runner, the one with Ryan Gosling?
Oh God, I don't remember.
Because it was long, but man, it was perfectly paced for me, and I'm not a long movie fan.
Yeah, same. But that's like an A movie for me.
Yeah.
Maybe an A+. I think I like that better than the original, honestly.
I'm fine with long run times as long as you make use of the time.
Right.
If you sit there and you're like, questioning like why, you know what I mean? Like, okay, where are we
Why
going?
am I here?
Where are we going? Then that's always where it runs the issue.
But to Chelsea's point, though, I do think we've seen this a lot more in the last 10 or so years. I don't know if it's the Marvelification. I don't know if it's been more post-pandemic. But like blockbusters just seemingly lately have all been like at least 10 to 20 or even 30 minutes too long. Everything is 2 hours and 20 minutes to 2 hours and 50 minutes. And it's like anything that's on this big
Which never
budget.
used to be the case.
Never.
Movies used to be anywhere from 90 to 2 hours. And like, so you'd have the occasional epic like Titanic or something like that, you know, like that stands out in mind. But in general, it wasn't, it's strange that this is now the new norm.
Or even The Fall Guy that just came out last week. I thought it was a really fun movie, but it was another one. You're like, this could have been 25 minutes shorter.
And I feel like it's always in the second act. Like, I feel like we still understand our first and our third acts. It's something about that transition point that has changed. Like we think we need to include extra, and like whereas when we were at 90 to 2 hours, like we got from A to B.
Yeah.
A to B to C.
And I wonder if it's a psychology of with like, with studios thinking like people don't go to the movies as much anymore. So when they do go to the movies, they go to see an epic of sorts. And so let's give them a full meal. So make it as vast and expansive as you can, which, in some cases works. But as we're saying here, like there's a tendency, you know what I mean, for these movies to feel like we didn't need that. We didn't need all of this. You could have there's a better 90 to 100-minute movie, in this movie that we're seeing. But,
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just kind of like the studio input conversation that is they always just need to stay out of it. But I wonder how much of it is like we now have the studios that are coming in and they're dictating things. So where we were making movies and we're like, okay, we need the extra time because we have more story to tell. Now we're like, we are trying to meet the mark that we've been given.
Right.
And a lot of times it's just ego.
I was going to say the director is probably going to bat for the longer run times.
And no offense to anybody at the table, but Killers of the Flower Moon should have done like a mini series. I think it was all ego to be like, we're going to make this super long movie and everybody's going to love it. It didn't work. So you know what I mean? So I think it is a lot of just ego. And to your point, I think the studios think, well, high ticket prices and IMAX, people want to get more for their money, but I think people would rather just have a really great 90 minutes than to sit there for $215 or $220.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, I remember back when the Transformers franchise did this in the aughts, but it was a real outlier. It was like, oh my gosh, the second one, whatever it was, I remember the second one, whatever it was, the one was made during the strikes where there was no story even, and it was like 2 hours and 50 minutes or 45 minutes or something. Yeah. And then the next one was it was just one of those things where you're like, why on earth is this movie this long?
How are you milking a 3-hour movie out? There is not enough content in this world. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
And I know maybe Marvel normalized a little bit. All those movies tend to be about 2 hours and 20 to 2 hours and 30 usually.
Because even like you think like Lord of the Rings and even Harry Potter, those made sense though to me. There was a lot of meat on the stories. There's a lot of ground to cover, and they're very dense books, in general. So I felt like that made sense. You know what I mean? Like I just think like, but the typical even comedies though, we're getting comedies that are 2.5 hours, which just don't make sense to me at all. Like so.
How long is If? Is it 2 hours?
It's 145.
Hey, I'll take 145.
Yeah, exactly. 145 is a perfect time to get your story and then get out.
But to your point, Matt, I also want to agree. I know we complain about this a lot, but like I do think that if you have a great story to tell, it take as long as you need. I mean, to tell the lengthy story. Laron, what letter grade would you give the film?
I'm also giving this a B. I do feel like it was technically well made and entertaining. Obviously, like I've made my minor gripes about it, but I do still feel like it's it wasn't a waste of my time. I just worry that future iterations might be if we don't have much more to say than this, if that makes sense. So
that's going to be on the cover for the Blu-ray. Not a waste of my time.
Not a waste of my time.
Yes,
but enjoyable still. Yeah,
Matt,
I gave it a C on my review, but I mean, there's smarter people here giving it B, so it makes me rethink what movie I watch. But I don't know. I'll split the difference. Probably do like a B minus. I think a C is probably a little harsh. To me, a B just seemed like they would have trimmed a little bit, maybe. So yeah, I'm about a B minus.
I'm also on a B. I think it's too long. But the things I find really interesting about it, and it's mostly world building stuff. There's some whole characters. There's William H. Macy pops up in this movie, and
he's not even on IMDb.
He's not on IMDb?
The credits. I scrolled
Right?
Unless he's like buried, but you look at the main page. I'm like, was it supposed to be like, he's a secret and he's going to come out? Or what?
What a weird secret. Well, I say that because his character does have a very specific world building purpose.
Sure.
Right.
That, again, it's like they either needed to give us more or just cut him out. Because I understand why he's there. You're like, we'll get into it in spoilers a little bit, but he serves a purpose in relation to Proximus, who's really the main antagonist of the movie. And you're like, well, but you had William H. Macy for 2.5 scenes? It's just bizarre. He's the biggest name in the movie, and he's not, and he doesn't really do anything. I don't know. So just stuff like that, where you're like head scratching decisions. But the VFX, the world building, it gets me to a B. It's a good movie that I don't regret watching. Am I going to rewatch it, Matt? That is a very valid question. Right now, yeah. If you would ask me walking out of the theater, I would have said, yeah, absolutely. But we're like, what, 5 days removed from me watching it. And I'm already kind of like, yeah, B. And then, maybe never again. We'll see. What else would we recommend to go alongside or in addition to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? It could be a movie, television show, novel, music, video game, other media recommendation. Laron, Chapman?
I feel like I recommend this movie a lot, but it seems to apply to a lot of situations. But Children of Men is a movie that I appreciate a lot, that I think deals with the collapse of the human race and in another poignant way. One of the themes that seems to be running through the course of this series. Another one that I think, a recent one, Jordan Peele's Nope, about our relationship to, a powerful entity, that's more powerful than our relationship to that and how our interaction with it affects the world we're living in. And then if you just want to see some more monkeys, and obviously any of the various iterations of King Kong that have come out in the last 15 years. So.
Are you partial to the 3-hour-long Peter Jackson version?
I actually like that one. I think that one gets a lot of flack. I think it's actually pretty well made. Once we get to the island.
Yeah.
That as the first hour kind of like,
Is that the Jack Black one?
Yeah.
It's pretty solid.
I like it.
I feel like at the hour mark, once we're in, I'm sorry, I'm blocking on the place he lives.
Adrian Brody, Skull Island.
Skull Island. Yeah. Once we get to Skull Island and shit gets kind of, then it's fun. It's a fun ride all the way to the end after that. So.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Underrated movie, but I think it's because that first hour is drag. Chelsea Ratterman?
So I am going to propose Westworld, either the movie or series.
Nice.
So
to be continued. Jonathan Nolan recently said he really wants to figure out how to finish it.
Yep. So so Westworld, just another we have created our own demise series. So yeah.
That 4th season really cooks.
It does.
Like the 3rd season, I know threw a lot of people off, but that last season, I was like, yeah, we're back. Not the I like 3 more than most people. That 4th season, very good. Great recommend. Matt, Mungo, how you going?
I struggled with this a little bit to find anything that was close. I will say, it's funny you brought this up because I was thinking Godzilla x Kong, because there is that whole scene, and it just came out not too long ago, where Kong is kind of doing the same thing. He's trying to save and free his species, from this other tyrant who's, keeping this. So I think that's a very good correlation to that. And then I was going to say, again, sounding like the old guy who was there, but going back and rewatching the original ones from the 60s and early 70s, when you get beneath the Planet of the Apes and all. And yes, it's horrible graphics. You can see the zipper in the back of the ape suits. It's just, it's horrid. But
it's part of the charm now.
But it is, looking at it and removing yourself from it and watching the dialogue in a non-tech generation who, the things they were talking about and doing, nobody would ever thought could come to pass, especially in movie making. And just some of the performances, I think revisiting some of those, because if you're in this enough to even want to think about watching something that's related, you might as well go back to the origin of where it all started, I think.
I think these are really interesting, maybe a really interesting exercise in trying to reflect on sort of how society has evolved the ideology, because I think a lot of times we're looking at man versus nature, but really the way that those movies are applied is there's always like a political or cultural context. There's much like these remakes, there's a very specific thing they're all speaking to, and interesting to see even amongst those like first 5 or 6, I think maybe it's 6 of them, 5 or 6 of those, they have different ideas in each one. Sometimes it's specifically about race. Other times it's about much more about nuclear war. Like they all are kind of dealing with something. So I would recommend, if you have any interest, Matt, I think that's a great rec. Go back and see the originals. There are 5, and you can really seriously just skip the 2001 remake. It's very bad. I'm going to recommend a video game, actually, Horizon Zero Dawn for the PlayStation 4, and there's also a sequel, Horizon Forbidden West. Those are both great because it's I'm kind of spoiling the premise a little bit, but it's set in a post-apocalyptic future that is so far in the future that humans have become tribal again, and you have all these different tribes. But then there's like these moments where they have this have discovered this advanced technology. So there's like elements of the technological, but it's all very tribal. And essentially these human characters are trying to both fight a great enemy that is equated to some sort of religion, while also sort of discovering and unearthing how the world got to be the way it was. It does some really, really cool things in terms of the world building and exploring how things like technology and iconography can become religious images or religious dogma, that sort of thing. So both of those are great games. Horizon Zero Dawn is on PS4. You can play it on PS5. And I think the sequel is also on PS4 and PS5. Well, with that said, listeners, if you don't want to be spoiled on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, go ahead and tune out now. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Go get him! Taylor! Why did you run away?
Security police.
I'm in charge of this man.
No longer, madam. He is now in the custody of the Ministry of Science.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
There's sometimes I'm not going to lie. I walk out of a movie and I'm like, spoilers. I don't know what we're going to talk about. And I was very encouraged because I actually thought a lot of the ideas in here, while not necessarily super well explored per se, were pretty rich. So the first one I want to touch on is the mythologization of a revolutionary leader. So this could be from a hero to a dogmatic icon. We've already talked a little bit about. So Caesar, we see sort of his origin story in the Reboot trilogy, how he became self-aware, how he led his people against the humans and ultimately to their air quotes promised land, away from human society. You also saw the fall of the human species due to a pandemic, essentially. So this film jumps ahead, as I said, 300 years following his death. And one of the things I thought the time jump provided was an opportunity to actually flesh out, what does the world look like after the guy does this? Because he's essentially like the birth of the species as a self-aware, speaking, they have language and whatnot. So Caesar's history and victories really form the foundation of a belief system that positions him sort of as the Moses or Messiah type figure. And I'm curious, the movie does use a couple of different characters to speak to different components of who Caesar was. So I just want to open it up to the table. I mean, why do you think it's so noteworthy that this film uses 2 different characters, that's Rocca and Proximus Caesar, to represent these differing views about Caesar's intentions for the apes? Laron, I'm throwing that tough question to you first, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, one, that we actually, as an audience, go in kind of knowing about Caesar's principles and values beforehand so that we can kind of see just how far removed, this generation of apes are from those kind of guiding principles. I also think it kind of supplies us with a great, juxtaposition for how something that was once noble and good can be twisted, perverted, and weaponized to advance, the agenda of an individual. And I think it functions also as a really nice allegory for like fundamentalism, and kind of blind faith religion, And I think that Rocca is kind of like the outlier here who kind of speaks truth to authority and isn't easily persuaded or indoctrinated. And then Proximus kind of preys on the vulnerable sustain power and control, which kind of echoes a lot of what happens with our own political and religious leaders in our own country. So I feel like those are the themes in the film that do work really well. I don't know, again, if it's enough of a conflict to, it's more of an idea, it's about ideology, and how.
Well, and then the kind of like the climactic battle was so small scale. We're not looking at like a Troy or Kingdom of Heaven type battle. It's more like hey, we want to break into the safe. And,
exactly. So it just, yes. Yeah. But I do think it's an interesting idea, and I definitely saw and could draw the comparison. And it is interesting because Caesar was such a noble figure that we've fallen in love with, and obviously, as we would interpret it, put the apes on a very good path to kind of now see how easily, like something that was once good could ever look like something that isn't. And I think that in many ways is how, religion, I think, can work for a lot of people. There might be good things in it, but there are certain people who have their own agendas that use it for bad, so.
Yeah. No, I think that's on point. Matt, what was your take about how the film sort of used this, deification of Caesar?
Yeah, I'd almost mirror everything you said. I mean, it's almost like I'm amazed sometimes as I was watching this thinking, especially in the religious and political realm that we live in, how something that was written or happened 2,000 years ago, I'll just use Christ as a reference, how two people from different sides can take those words and turn one into the same words and make it a hate speech, and then the other forget to embrace the love that was supposed to be there.
Yeah,
it was all about love, and then we see that in here. It's like, well, let's love this person instead of trying to manipulate or use. And it's like from the Shakespeare movie. I just lost it. The one with Gwyneth Paltrow, when the Queen's there and the guy's just like quoting the Queen, and she's like, be careful using my name because you're going to wear it out. And some people,
Shakespeare in Love. Yeah.
Shakespeare in Love. Thank you. Yes. So I got that in this one, that it was like a very amazing social metaphor of where we are and how some people will use the same context of a character like Caesar as an agenda to push their own agenda and totally miss
the
point and what it started out as. So I thought they did a good job at that. I will say too, as I heard you talking about it, the more you talk, the more I realized I don't like this movie. It was like you were going, I was like, there's so much, like he's a Moses character, but you named him Noah. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. So there's just, I don't know, there's just so much about this and so much stuff we've all hit on so many holes and so many thin plots that I just, other than the blatant, obvious metaphor of two people twisting the same words and using the same, that's about all you could take from it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did very, very aptly. But he's by the time we're gonna have a re-review, he's like, I said C originally. You suckers talked me up to a B minus, and now I'm back down to a D because we talked me out of a good letter grade. But Chelsea, what was your take on this idea?
So a lot of what they've already said. So I think maybe I'll just focus on like the religious aspect. Is we have Caesar as essentially they're a god to them now. And looking at it in terms of like how our own like religions have developed, and just like there are things that were not Caesar that have been applied to Caesar because of time and distance. Because I mean, at one point in one of the movies, I think it's probably the third one, he says, "I am Koba." So now, 300 years removed, we don't have a Caesar and a Koba. We have Caesar who has had Koba attributed to him. And that's how we potentially have seen that separation in those sects, is because they're seeing this within the historical context and it's being added to the religious context. And welcome to religion. And they're basically just drawing parallels to how humanity
And there's no one to contest it because we're so many years apart, unless you're Rocky in the middle of the woods, tell everybody, hey,
Right. And all you do is just have the sheep masses just sitting there, and all they have to go by is what this this magnetic person is telling them.
Mm-hmm.
So
No way to verify these
no
things.
way.
Well, and they're actually trying,
and not having the smarts to go and verify it for yourself, just taking it as
At face
gospel.
because they can't read. But another thing I think, well, that's the thing, they can't read. So they literally just have. Well, no, I mean, I'm saying though, it literally is how a lot of this stuff they can't read. I'm not saying they're dumb. I'm just saying they're not. They can't go verify this information in any meaningful way.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they have, and Laron, I think to your point earlier, well, you have Proximus versus Rocket. Well, Proximus is a strong man who's up there. He has an army behind him, and yes, he is very charismatic and says all the right words and gets people on board. But also, there's a little bit of fear innately with the people who are like, "Oh, if I don't agree with him, what do I do?" You know, people aren't going to listen to Rocca. He's too nice.
Right.
He's a nice old sage versus this guy who's like, "Oh, he might kill me if I don't roll with it." But I think, Chelsea, though, back to your point, one of the things I thought was pretty interesting was, and you see it with the name Proximus Caesar, like the idea that Proximus was really into, and this is the one function that William H. Macy's character serves, is he can read and he's able to pass down these human histories and tell Proximus about it. So of course Proximus, being sort of like obsessed with power, is really into the Roman Empire, you know. And so you're talking about attribution. There's a lot of the practices of the Roman Empire we're seeing him attribute. Even does the speech about it's on the label because Kingdom of the Planet. He's like, what do you see? Simba, or Noah in this case, it's a kingdom. We're building a kingdom. We're bringing these tribes together, much like you saw in the early Roman Empire. So, but again, he's attributing like that desire to Caesar about apes together strong, and he's like, so we've got to build an empire, right? I thought that was kind of interesting. Other than that, though, William H. Macy, guys, what a waste. Holy cow. He wasn't like, there was one scene he was in and didn't even have lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at first I thought that, well, they're gonna keep him around for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Nope. He dead. He dead.
No.
He dead. Oh yeah, we're in spoilers. I was like,
Yeah, we're spoilers.
He
Yeah.
dead. He's dead.
Yeah, I think that just sort of takes me on to maybe a next topic here about humans being extinct in this franchise. Because as I mentioned earlier, you see sort of these movies transition further and further away from the humans, but we have basically 2 humans, maybe 3 if you include the very end, that are in the film. And frankly, neither of them have very much screen time at all.
I was surprised by that with the female character. Was it May or Nova?
Mm-hmm.
I was very surprised to see that, because it did seem like they were positioning that character to be much more like, you know what I mean, like of the main character of sorts, you know.
You were thinking there's once you figure out, once you discover she can talk, you're like, okay, so she's gonna be like the second main character. Nah, man,
big influential thing, and I'm like, well, she's there, but I mean,
and again, I felt it was a setup for what's coming. Like they're just introducing this character and she's going to be.
She probably have a lot more to do in the sequel, which is true.
Maybe, yeah. You never with these jokers.
Is a sequel in 1 year or in 20 years? We'll never know.
We'll never know.
I hope
we're here to see it.
For real. I mean, like Matt, what did you think about the use of the human characters in this film?
Again, we didn't really get them. And it goes back to confusion. There's so much confusion of, well, why? Because we know that the virus caused the humans not to be able to talk, and the apes advanced. But there's this sect of humans who can't. Did they learn to talk, or did they never get the virus? Did they over time have the society of we can talk, or were they from? And where was this? Was this a worldwide
pandemic?
Is everything going on here, and everybody in London's living like no big deal?
Right.
Well, we know that. Well, okay, I
just don't have enough information to answer your question.
So there's basically 2 waves of the virus that come through. The first one is worldwide. We know for a fact that one was spread globally in the first film, because in the little stinger you see the pilot gets it, and that's what kills most humans. Then there's the second one where humans lose their speech in the third movie. We don't know how local or global that threat is, and they never explain that.
And did they lose just their speech or all mental capacities?
That's also kind of vague.
It's like, oh, I can't talk, but I'm still smart enough to know that something's not right. It's like you just don't know. And so they had to rebuild these cities. And then we get all of this. I'm glad we're in the spoiler section of this whole another group trying to get the satellites where it's like,
well, those people seem like they're the ones who like just because they were wearing the
Like
hazmat suits and stuff.
Right.
They seem like they just hunkered down and like they've been like in a bunker
For 300 years?
Yeah,
That's what I want.
that's
That's the thing. Is like, what are they eating, and what is their source of food, and why do the apes not know anything about?
Like, I would believe it more if it was like, and again, I think that's why there was a cop out saying several generations have passed. They're not going to say 300 years because I would believe, okay, these people have been hunkered down for 50 years.
Right.
60 years.
Which would seem more logical.
Yeah, but 300 years and they're still wearing these hazmat suits that would have corroded 100 years ago. I don't understand any of it.
It's a stretch.
It's a stretch.
Maybe we should have recommended Fallout in the
yeah.
recommendations. Honestly, I
Yeah.
hadn't considered that. Great show. It has a pretty good ending too. It also ties into the Westworld wreck. Chelsea, what did you think of the use of the humans in this film?
So oddly enough, I kind of think that it was appropriately used. Because I think that we're going back to like the parallels, it's drawing a comparison of like how we have developed in our world. And so the humans are experiencing the inverse of the apes. So the apes have ascended as the humans have descended. So they had to experience the similarities. So I think because we only had a few named intelligent apes in the beginning, and then we grew. So now we're going to see the same thing with the humans, maybe. It works as a parallel, like an inverse of each other, I think.
Yeah, no, I liked that in the original trilogy. Listen, I'm not going to be too hard on it with this film. I'm going to be really hard on the William H. Macy thing because that was just, again, functionally as a world building. I'm like, okay, someone needs to be there to tell Proximus all the stuff about human history. And that's pretty cool. And I think we haven't even talked about it. I actually thought Proximus was a pretty fun villain. I really like Kevin Durant as a performer. I know we just saw him in Abigail. He's back here.
Yeah.
Look, and frankly, he's given way more to do. So I just want to throw that out there. I think, but like in terms of the Nova May character, it's kind of like the jury's still out, which isn't really, it makes, Matt, to your point, it makes me frustrated with this film. Because I actually feel like they're taking it in a direction that could be really interesting because I don't really know what they're going to do with the humans next because we know that humans are going to be enslaved. That's like the one thing that's kind of missing between this film and the original film is that there's enough humans to be enslaved. Yep. But like in terms of like, well, they've got some technology. Yeah. We know they're going to be enslaved. They seem like they're pretty down on their luck. So they're going to have another resurgence and we're going to get more wars. I don't know.
Right. That's my concern is like, are we going backwards? Like just got to do like, let's just redo the last ones, like, and I just feel like that we don't need that. It needs to go in a different direction. But to your point about William H. Macy, the thing I kept wondering, and I'm sure this isn't answered in the film, is like, so in 300 years, you know what I mean? Like, so William H. Macy is what, about how old? Maybe 60s?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
60s. So did he, you know what I mean? Like, did he come here as a baby? Like, who?
Well,
when did he come into the fray with the other apes and become this person to tell them about previous generations of humans? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. It just feels there's a lot of gaps in terms of one in logic, but then also just that probably could have been fleshed out or could have been explained. Or maybe we could have spent part of the middle of this movie kind of getting more information about that, like how this.
Well, because he, again, on paper he actually represents a really interesting idea, which is you're a human with all this knowledge, and instead of using the knowledge to fight the apes, you're saying, well, let's be a pet, because that is to preserve me,
his survival. His intentions make sense. I guess I just don't know.
But I want to know
his origin.
I was saying there's more stuff there though. I feel like there's more stuff in both of those facets.
And he would be smart enough. I mean, I don't know if the Optimus Prime ape guy, whatever his name is,
Proximus Prime.
It's like if he can't read and he's trusting William H. Macy to tell him, then William H. Macy could say anything. He'd be like, "Oh, it says right here that the apes and the humans coexisted, and that's the history, and and that's how we win wars is by embracing." It's like he could have told him anything.
Yeah, and he's holding on to this idea that we gotta rub shoulders with the apes and make peace with the apes because our past, what you're thinking about from 300 years ago, which how would you have a concept of it? How would you have a concept of it because it's been so long? I don't know. It's like and I think that's what it is we needed more humans to be, oddly enough, we needed more humans to talk about how they've passed on this information so that someone like May and and I don't know William H. Macy's character's name, but
Well, I guess like I guess here's a better. I want to be careful, and Laron, call me out if I'm misappropriating this, but I'm thinking about Django Unchained. How Samuel L. Jackson is a foil to the main Django in that movie.
yeah.
And see, that's a dynamic that like I think they could have implemented here in some interesting ways, but they just don't. So number one, they don't.
Yeah.
You just have, I think there's like one conversation where they kind of disagree, and it's like, oh, and now he's dead. And then there's also the origin thing. Yeah. Why does he feel like he should tell the apes the truth? There's just a lot there.
Yeah.
That's missing.
And like you said, if he came along as a baby and it's been 300 years, he's had parents and grandparents and great grandparents and great great. What did they pass down in their lineage? They didn't pass anything down that he still just has to teach Roman history.
Right.
This is what I think this is my irritation with these movies is there is such a good idea of a meditation on humans are trash. Can somebody do it better? And so William H. Macy is the guy that can translate the Hebrew. We have to trust him to translate the Bible. It could be BS. And we don't know.
Right.
And that's the parallel is there. We now have the apes that are evolving in the same way we evolved. So are they going to do it better? Are they going to do it worse? Are they going to make the same mistakes?
Yeah. Did King James translate it 2,000 years ago as BS?
Right.
It's like, and now here we are
And-
believing in something that, I mean, who knows?
Right. And I that's why I need these movies to commit to that bit
Right.
of we're trash. Can somebody do it better? Or are they going to make the same mistakes?
Yeah.
I think they just need to go a little harder because I think it's all there. It's just they don't fully. Well, I should say this movie. I do think, especially the second and third ones, do a pretty good job. This one in particular, though, they needed to lean more into it, and I think that the stakes should have been a little higher too. I mean, again, the kind of the core thing driving Proximus, and again, even on paper, I'm like, this is a pretty interesting plot device. There's a safe, and inside the safe, who someone has told them, and I don't care. I don't need to know, but maybe William H. Macy. But in this safe is the key to knowledge, and I'm like, ooh, that's a good like allegorical. That's a thing that I'm like, that's a pretty cool idea. What's in the box? And then obviously, I know that when you discover what the thing is, it's almost never as interesting as like what it could be. But when they get in there, it just feels like such a low stakes.
It's like war weapons. It's like, okay, so, but I guess those are I guess it's kind of dealing again with the end when we're learning about how technology is now again being kind of resurrected.
But like, what if the apes had gotten a hold of the tanks? There were tanks in there. There was a lot of weaponry that could have been used or done. And really what's in there that the Nova character is afraid of is there's like some sort of transmitter that'll allow them to connect the satellites together that she needs. So I don't know. It felt kind of clunky.
Too many questions are coming out of it. It's like, could you, because I had forgotten because I hadn't seen them in a while. There's a scene you said where they ride into San Francisco on horses with guns.
Yeah.
At what point did the guns go away that they're now, none of the apes have guns?
Yeah, I mean, I'm making this again. You have to make a lot of assumptions, and it didn't bother me too much. But my assumption is they ran out of ammo. Basically, like it sounds dumb, but yeah.
So they made the little so they figured out how to make the little prodding things.
Yeah.
I'm
glad Caesar used them too, didn't he?
Did he?
At some point, did he?
You guns?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
Okay, I was gonna
In
say,
fact, there's an iconic shot from the third one where he walks out of a shed with a pump action shotgun, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
I know, but so guns went away and now they got the electric prods.
Yeah.
Who figured out how to make that?
I guess they figured out engineers, man. I guess.
But are those just left over too? Because we had them. I mean,
we did.
Draco
They used them
Malfoy
on
had
them.
the stick.
They used them on the apes. So.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Maybe we're overthinking, but they underthought it.
Here's the thing about this world building stuff. I'm not actually that bothered by it, but I totally understand how it could drive someone insane. It's a similar thing with, I mentioned the Horizon games. It's kind of a similar problem where the storytellers are very selective in like what stuff makes the transition to the air quotes new world order. You're like, well, they have this. How did they not figure this out? And da-da-da-da-da. Doesn't really bother me. I can see it's driving some of you insane.
Only because if you're going to do it with continuity and make it, if not just make it a parallel, do like Marvel did. Oh, it's another parallel universe.
Right.
Whatever.
So it sounds like in general at the table, we're not really a big fan of the human stuff. In general, I'm gonna leave the jury out totally. it's not right. This is not how you review movies. In the context of this movie, I think it's a miss. I think it's a miss in context of this specific film. Now, it could be that if we get 2 more of these, and I'm honestly not sure we're going to get 2 more of these, at least in this iteration. They do something in the next one where I was like, oh, okay, so we had to set that up in this one for it to pay off in the next one. But right now, I'm just like you were saying, Laron,
scratching my head as to what that is.
Yeah, because we know the end game is they're going to be slaves. Humans are slaves. So what's the middle?
Yeah.
And I hope I'm not jumping ahead here, but you're talking about the humans and what we're going to see from them. As humans sitting at this table, as the movies progress, who are we ultimately supposed to root for?
I think we're supposed to root for the apes.
I was like, I'm definitely rooting for the apes. I'll say that.
I mean, I think so. I mean, I would root for Caesar. I don't know if I would root for any of them. Because Noah, I mean, I liked him and his friends, but there was I didn't engage with them like I did with Caesar enough that I'm pulling for them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anything bad to happen, but I want them to go back and live in their little houses.
Because Caesar had a clear point of view and a clear perspective and a clear driving force. Like we have to be better than this. We have to because he had the privilege of seeing both sides of it. You know, seeing humans that were good to him. You know, the people that raised him, people that taught him everything, and then realizing that there was this inner quarrel where it's like, hey, so it just seems like with Noah, it's like he's just figuring it out. You know what I mean? Like just like, oh, okay, so this is the good thing. I should do this.
It's just not as interesting on a character development side. And this really does feel like they're trying to do Star Wars: A New Hope. And I mean, you know, we got the previous 3 films that are a lot more meditative. This is the big adventure film. I mean, it literally is there's a whole world out there bigger than what I knew about, and I'm going to go out and become the hero, you know?
Yeah.
Actually, I could have also recommended Zelda in here too, you know, speaking of which. But I don't know. Maybe we just hit on our last thought here, which is, you know, evolving one of all Hollywood's oldest franchises again. This is the third. I mean, we're on technically the third. Well, if you count the remake, the 4th.
Yeah.
Air quotes reboot version of these. I know this is technically in continuity with the last one, but they are calling it kind of a soft reboot.
Yeah.
Why do you think this core idea of man versus animal, why do we think this endures? Chelsea, you mentioned humans are just trash.
They are.
Let's just dive into it.
The man versus animal thing is because man cannot accept they are animal.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're in tension with it.
I need that on a shirt.
Like, we are part of the animal kingdom. It is right there. And so it's a tension between we have evolved to the point where have we evolved where we can't, like, we don't need to be considered that, or like, it's the tension of the development versus the reality.
Mm-hmm.
We are still animals. We still have the base impulses, everything like that, but we want to pretend like we're not. And that's why it endures, because it will always be the conflict.
And no matter what thing we're dealing with, at the end of the day, we're still primates, essentially. Whether it's politics, cultural revolutions, technology, we're still just apes.
Yep.
That's an interesting idea, Matt.
Yeah, I think that's right. I hadn't thought about that. That's very deep. I won't sleep tonight. I won't sleep.
Damn, I'm an animal.
And it goes even deeper than that. In my mind, it's pride that you look at our society, even human Americans even elevate that more, that, you know, we have arrived. And it's like, if you're not American and don't live in our country, then we can't associate with you. We don't want you coming in and bringing us down because we have arrived. And I think it is. And we forget that there's humans all over the planet, some who have not, I mean, they don't have electricity. They don't even need it, and they're surviving. But we feel like we've arrived. So yeah, I think that's
we're
exactly
somehow
right.
better than them because we have those things.
Right. We still are made up of the same parts. You know, we're still the same, but we just feel like, that maybe our intellect and the fact that we have invented things elevates us, and it doesn't. And you're right. It just puts us back into the animal kingdom. We're all just survival of the fittest, and we've just seemed to sort of survived better.
Well, and we're not above being surpassed in terms of evolution. I mean, I think that what makes these movies interesting and enduring is it because it is apes specifically. We have how many movies about robots surpassing us, which, you know, is also a very viable threat to our future at the rate we're at right now. But also, I think, and that idea is, we created something. There's still a little bit of ego in there. We created something that became smarter than us versus Planet of the Apes. It's like, no. Our ego was our fall, and that these apes.
I wonder often if the apes would have been better. You know what I mean? Like if we just let apes. I don't know. I say that, but
like it was the luck of evolution.
The luck of evolution, exactly. Yeah. And also, I think it's just a relatable concept. We share this world with many living species, and our relationship with them is constantly evolving, and it's very complicated. And also because we pollute and destroy the world all the time, and I think that it constantly presents this existential threat, about our own collective survival, here, because at some point we're not making the world any better for the, the living beings that that live alongside us. And we're to blame for that, because we're aware of it. We know we're doing it, you know what I mean? And we want all these things that we're using as we are slowly seeing the world kind of dwindle. So it's like, are we the evolved race, or are we just lucky? You know what I mean? Like, cause
Well, also there's the question of the human nature as well. Are we giving in to our worse, more Koba type instincts? If you were to speak to the earlier films or in this film, even are we falling for the Proximus type drifters out there who are charismatic? And also, again, I want to call out, not this movie, I'm not going to say it was perfect, but I love that the scene in the courtyard felt like it was straight out of a church service.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
like the religious imagery behind him. He was like, "Isn't it a great day? Everyone welcome. It's great. Isn't it great? I'm going to quote the words of Caesar right here. Isn't it great? Now let's go blow that freaking thing up." It's just like,
it's a weird fusion
100%.
of, it's a weird fusion of like, cause I wouldn't look at him as like as a president, it's more so like, no, he's like a pastor.
Yeah.
He's a pastor, and
like one of those motivational speakers. It's like, and if you pay all this money, we're going to tell you how.
Inside this thing, if you send me your $5 bill, if we all do it, we can blow up in the safe.
Yeah. and go back to, I think it's fear too. As humans, we fear more than we were willing to admit. We're scared that we're something's going to become greater than we are. Mm-hmm. And so fear kind of results in anger, and anger results in a lot of bad stuff.
And hate.
Hate is a root of fear. It just blossoms from it. So it's insane.
And then, as Yoda would finish the saying, leads to suffering. All those things are true. Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like most of us around the table are on, like, what if we just didn't make more Apes movies? So I'm not on that page yet. I had a lot of fun with this one. Would
intrigued enough. I think I'm a huge fan of this series in general. Like I just think that and I was very much looking forward to this. And like I said, for the most part, I enjoyed it. But I do feel like I'm more like, we had a good thing and we ended it well. So
why make more?
Why make more if it's not going to do anything new, fresh, or interesting? And that's my only concern moving forward. This is good enough, but is it good enough to warrant 3 to 6 more of these?
Certainly didn't blow our socks off like the 2011 film did.
Like when this came out, exactly. That definitely was like, oh, this is exciting. This is different from the Tim Burton movie. Like this is a more interesting take on it, and so I just don't know if this one presents, enough of a promise of greatness moving forward, so. But I could be wrong. The next one could come, and it could.
But what about
It could dawn of the Planet of the Apes me.
Yeah, exactly. What about Scorched Trials of the Apes? That's the next one. The Maze Runners.
Yes.
Matt, what do you? I don't know. What do you think? More movies? What do you want to see if you want to see them?
No, I agree 100%. I always want to see more movies if they're done well. I don't want you to just make a movie just because you can. I mean, they're going to have to evolve into something greater that we're not going to just forget them and not want to see them again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing about, you look at other trilogies like The Dark Knight. I mean, I can go back and watch that all the time. The Harry Potter series, it never gets old. The books and the movies never get old. Was it brilliant writing? No. Was it some kind of like mind-blowing conception? No, but they just did it in a way that made sense and had depth, and you loved the characters and you loved everything about it. And if they don't do that, then I don't see a point.
Mm-hmm. So only make another one if it's good. Well, I mean, I think that's
If you got something,
baseline.
if you have something, don't milk the IP just to
Well,
milk it.
I just think it's an important thing to stay because I really do feel like we are in this weird spot where studios just are like, if it's got IP, we've got to make a sequel, even if nobody wants it. I mean, I'd even throw out the latest Indiana Jones movie. I know Harrison Ford wanted it, so I don't want to say no one, but it was like one of those things where, and it flopped, by the way, compared against the budget it was on it. You're just like, no one was really clamoring for more of that. There was a couple of those last year, I think, where it's just like, who said this was like a thing that I wanted, you know? And sometimes it works out. Sometimes they surprise us, but other times you get duds, you know?
Well, that's a good point too, is if I owned the IP, I don't want it to end here. It's like I always feel like, oh, I got to make something better because I don't want this to be the last thing. Like Indiana Jones, we couldn't end on the Shia one.
Mm-hmm.
That was so bad. It's like, well, we got to do something else. We can't let our legacy end with that. And maybe that's what they're trying to do here is they're like, well, if we do enough, we're going to hit one that's so amazing, we can say that's our legacy and we'll stop. I don't know.
Apparently it's at the 9th movie. Allegedly. Chelsea, where do you want to
see? If Tom Cruise does it.
Well, you know, once the Mission Impossible money dries up, he's gonna have to go somewhere.
He'll have to go somewhere. Yes. I want to see more because I want to see them commit to the conversation or the thought that they're having here, and I want them to tell me because I mean, movies we're entertaining, but we are saying something. So tell me, are we doomed to repeat our own mistakes, or is somebody gonna be able to do it better? I want to know. That's what I want to know.
It's an important question. You need to answer, and I hope they answer it. And
I hope so.
Wherever the apes are going next.
I do know that we know it ends in apes owning humans as slaves. So I don't know if the answer is very clear, but we'll see. We'll see. You know, I just want them to get the title sorted. Honestly, please God. You know what? As much as I like to make fun of the Fast and Furious franchise titles, they need to give more of a shit about. Like, just, right? It doesn't have to be Planet of the Apes in the title. Like, Fast and Furious, you have Furious 6, you have F9, the Fast Saga, Fast X.
Too fast.
Everyone knows. Everyone knows what franchise it belongs to. Just say Kingdom of the Apes. That flows. It's clean. There's no of this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, just figure that out. Yeah, I just hope I mean, this movie was good enough. I think you're right, Laron. I think we're all. I agree with everything being said, which is, I'm willing to see more, but I really feel like there needs to be a Dark Knight or an Empire Strikes Back for this one to really work and fire on all cylinders for me. As is, I had a good time. It's better than I expected, but also there's a lot you're left wondering, did we really need this one? You know. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, those are our thoughts on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Is there anything else anyone else wants to add before we wrap up today's conversation?
Are we going to space next? I look.
They already went to space.
That's true. They went to space.
So maybe
well, you're right. Yeah.
Maybe that's where we're going. Is we're just going to end. Maybe we're just going to, this full circle. This ends where
they're going to get on a rocket ship and leave.
Yeah. Charlton Heston was right. This wasn't Earth after all.
Are we going to get a computer-generated Charlton Heston one day?
No, please no.
Please no. I'm sure his estate would not be happy about that. All right, listeners. Well, there you have it. We all thought it was various degrees of pretty good, I guess. Well, hey, Matt, Chelsea, it's been so much fun talking with you guys today. Where can listeners keep up with you and all your work online? I'll start with you, Matt Mungle.
Everything is at theentertainmentanswer.com or mungleshow.com. They're both mirror sites, and all of our socials and everything, the links to the radio show and all that is through that. So I just start there.
And you guys are crushing it. And you guys talk about movies, but also TV, all sorts of things.
Yeah,
right?
We do a weekly podcast called T on TV, T being the Entertainment Answer, and another guest host, and we just kind of break down what we're watching, what's streaming, good stuff to watch on TV. We kind of go back and look at old shows and like some of our favorites and, things like that as well. So yeah, so movies and television.
Very cool. Listeners, check them out. Lots of great conversations, and you guys are always on. You guys cover a lot. Very impressive. Chelsea, how about you? Where can I find the two dudes in the movie?
Two dudes in a movie. So you can find us on Spotify, Apple, and I think Amazon. You can follow me at Cinephile Chels. You can witness the story wars that my co-host and I have on our Two Dudes in a Movie Instagram stories.
Fun.
Lord of the Rings series, trash, right?
No. No, we do not share this opinion. I do not endorse it. So yeah,
Three
so check
dudes
us out.
and
Yeah.
bring him out.
All right. Well, check them out. Chelsea, congrats on the new gig, Two Dudes in a Movie. We're very excited to continue listening to Two Dudes in a Movie. Thanks for being the gender neutral dude on our podcast today.
Happy to be here.
Laron Chapman, where can people follow you and all the great things you're doing out there?
You can continue to follow me at the Cinematropolis on this podcast that you're listening to now, and also my column on the website, Real Insights with Laron Chapman.
You know, speaking of which, you've got first Omen in the wings that's going to be coming out here soon. You have several that are
challengers. A lot of them down the pipeline. Yeah, for sure.
Guys, these are short little reviews that they really sizzle, they cook. You know, it was funny. I read your Monkey Man one the other day, and I forgot to mention this early in the podcast. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the conclusion of the spring of the Apes movies, because we had Monkey Man. We had Godzilla x Kong,
yes,
and now Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
And I only noticed this because when we saw Dune Part 2, they all played
at the same time. The
like,
trailers back to back. We were like, wait, what's the thing? Is Monkeys the theme this year?
Theme this spring. That's what we're doing. So you've made it, and if you want to follow that journey, you can look at Laron's reviews on Real Insights with Laron, at least for Monkey Man. Of course, you can follow me on thecinematropolis.com, all of our socials there. I'm also personally can be found on Letterboxd, Insta, at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. We have arrived, next episode, I'm very thrilled to say we have arrived at the movie of the year for me, perhaps. What a lovely day. I thought what a wonderful day. We're going to be reviewing Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. So start your engines, because I think it's going to be a great one. Until next time.